Jeremy, first tell us a little bit about the CRDA.
1.25% of the gross revenues generated by the casinos comes through us as investments, and we invest that money still today on a statewide basis, and we have three funds that we've used to make investments in all parts of the state. There's a North Jersey fund, a South Jersey fund, and an Atlantic City specific fund. Originally, we started out with just that Atlantic City fund, and then over time, the legislature saw fit to expand it to other parts of southern New Jersey. And the biggest, probably, and most talked about responsibility is the designation, the master planning, and ultimately the operations of the Atlantic City Tourism District, which was sort of the feature of the legislation that the governor and the legislature put in place here. So we're operating in a new paradigm in Atlantic City, but the idea is that certainly the thinking of the legislature and the governor was these interventions are things that are ultimately going to be beneficial to the future of Atlantic City, both as a tourist destination and also as a city, and that's kind of the day-to-day focus.
And we're here today to talk specifically more about the Arts District. So, in the context of what you just told us about CRDA, how does the Arts District fit into that overall plan?
The future of the downtown isn't necessarily the unfettered expansion of the retail environment. In order to create a functioning downtown, you need residential development, you need commercial office development, you need expansion of institutional development when you talk about hospitals and institutions of higher education, to the extent that you have them. Unfortunately, here we do. And you need to create walkability. So we talked about all these things in terms of the principles, and this is what we do, in terms of economic development and real estate. So there was a playbook that developed, and as we began to formulate these ideas, the Arts District became a core component to this downtown plan. And we looked at this area that had been discussed, along the Mississippi Avenue corridor as the potential location for an Arts District. And we just decided to put our arms around it and say, yes, this is where the Arts District will be. There was a rationale for that in terms of proximity to what's regarded as a stable neighborhood, proximity to the walk, the opportunity to create a bay to boardwalk or bay to ocean corridor there. And it made sense for a lot of reasons, not the least of which was the presence of some existing arts-related uses in that area. We're creating something that benefits the community in terms of this sort of notion of cultural enrichment, something that's attractive to the tourist community and lends itself to sort of a tourist destination, and also obviously something that's going to be an economic contributor to the downtown. So it's sort of a win-win-win situation if it's done right. And one of the reasons why we've entered into this trying to look for partnerships is because we want to make sure that it's done right. And again, we don't profess to know that world in terms of the arts, so we've reached out to organizations like ArtC and some of the local museums and galleries to say, this is your world, how do we do this in the best way, and begin to define roles for all of these different organizations.
You mentioned two things for the benefit of people who aren't familiar. One is the Walk, which is retail, and the other is Dante Hall, which is a small theater, correct?
I guess it's within the last, maybe 4 months, 4 months or so, Stockton College has taken over management of Dante Hall, and they entered into a partnership with the diocese to do that. So they will become the operator of Dante Hall, and their express intention going into that partnership was to bring back performances of various kinds to Dante Hall. And one of the reasons why Stockton has become such a partner, we haven't formalized any partnership with them yet, but they've become a real participant in the Arts District conversation, is because of the presence of Dante Hall. They like the idea of trying to make that Mississippi Avenue corridor, kind of an arts-themed district, or bona fide arts district. And we're working with them on programming and trying to figure out how we create activity, not just at Dante Hall, but all throughout that district, because again, what we know about these arts districts is that they survive on the strength of the programming. We know that you just can't streetscape and put up signage and do all the visual things and make it an arts district. And as I said in a meeting with ArtC in this room, that we want this to be more than just an arts district in name only. We want it to function that way. And we need partnerships with entities like Stockton and within the arts communities with established arts organizations in particular who know how to program, who have access to the kind of people that we're going to want to bring in to make it work. Standing it up is one thing in terms of creating the district. There's a lot that we can do to do that in the near term. But I think Mike Cagno has said very well, making it sustainable is really, the thing that we need to keep our eye on the ball and make sure that that happens. So these partnerships are, going to be key to doing that. But having the presence of a Dante Hall and having an opportunity to do something arts related with the retail portion of our parking garage, and also the possibility of doing additional arts related development as part of a mixed use development that we're hoping will move forward going into the end of this year, early next year, where there'll be some residential development and some retail development on the ground floor. There might be an opportunity to continue to brand this area with these uses. And, we've been trying to set the stage for that by developing strategically, creating these partnerships, looking at zoning to actually, create the physical environment that we want to create down there that will lend to some of the uses that we want to bring there. And it's obviously a labor-intensive effort, but I think we're certainly on the path to doing that, to where this has become a very real conversation with people who are willing to contribute to it, whether it's in the form of, financial contributions or sweat equity or, intellectual capital. So that's exciting. I mean, that we've gotten to this point, and now it's just about harnessing that momentum and actually getting somewhere to where we can bring the rest of the world into this conversation, whoever is interested.
You mentioned the parking garage a couple of times. Why don't you describe that for us?
Yeah, we have it's about just under 1,200 space parking garage, 1,100 something odd parking spaces. We're building it right in the downtown at Mississippi and Fairmount Avenues. It's right adjacent to the walk across the street from the famous Angelo's Tavern. And obviously, it's being built to service an existing parking need, but also to service what is an anticipated parking need based upon other development plans that we have in the downtown. And the ground floor of the garage contains 17,000 square feet of retail space, which basically is a blank slate for us now. But we had made a decision some time ago that as the owner of the garage, we've funded the project. We're developing it with our own money. We've gone out and hired a general contractor. We decided that we wanted to make the retail something unique to that environment. So instead of going out and getting kind of a brand name, entity to come into that space, which would be the simpler thing to do, quite honestly, from a financial point of view, we said, why don't we try to make this, what I've been just calling arts-driven retail? Can we get arts-related uses in that space and still make it maybe a point-of-service retail experience where, there's going to be a cash register somewhere, but that's not just the focus of it. So we started to get into conversations with Noise Museum, with Wheaton Village, with people who have galleries off island about, how could we get you into this space and make this an environment where there is an opportunity to sell art or works of art that might be produced elsewhere, but there may also be an opportunity to produce art on location in this space.
When you were talking about partners and how a museum, a gallery owner, Stockton College, so if you want to continue that thought.
Today, one thing we obviously understand is that most of these arts organizations are very challenged financially right now because their sources of funding have dried up. Their revenues are down, however they derive them from visitorship. So we're entering into these conversations eyes wide open, realizing that many of these organizations aren't going to have a lot to bring to the table financially, but they do bring a lot to the table in terms of expertise in running these facilities and, understanding of art and what an arts district is, what its needs are, and of this very valuable integral programming component that really we believe is going to be the thing that makes the arts district what it is. So, I think we're mindful of that, and we just need to let the conversations play out. It's going to be individual to each entity that we speak to in terms of what they can and can't do or what kind of presence they're looking to assume. I don't expect that with this space, people are going to necessarily be picking up and moving from one location to another. This might be a small way, a toe in the water for them to test whether they might open up sort of a satellite type facility in Atlantic City. Part of the wisdom of putting this arts district where it is along Mississippi Avenue, again, going back to the walk, you have a very successful retail environment there, which should, lend itself very well to the presence of a walkable, functioning arts district. And if we're offering other kinds of retail opportunities within that arts district, then these things could become very mutually reinforcing. And that's the goal. And, we're still at a point in Atlantic City where even though, casino revenues are down and we all understand the problems that the city and the industry are having, you still have somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million people coming here annually. And to be able to create another experience for those people, which again is really what this whole downtown plan is about, to create, a number of experiences outside of the four walls of the casinos for visitors and for people that live here.
It sounds like you're putting a lot of emphasis on synergy, meaning Dante Hall obviously is performing. You may have some visual arts in the garage, and it sounds like you're really mindful of how the various elements will complement one another.
Yeah, that's why citing the arts district and bounding it along that Mississippi Avenue corridor was purposeful. We thought about Boardwalk Hall, we thought about Dante Hall, we thought about the opportunity in the garage retail, and once we just laid it out in that way and looked at it on the map, it seemed to be a natural in terms of, again, next to a very successful retail asset, in between, that and a stable neighborhood environment, and on a corridor which really lends itself to the kind of walkability, and then bringing in just Atlantic City's natural advantages in terms of the bay to ocean. Again, it was hard to argue against that, and in shopping this idea around just locally and doing these sort of road shows, there were very few, if any, people who didn't get that once it was really articulated in that way. So that's good to know that there was buy-in. There are always going to be conversations about, well, why not over here? And people talk about other areas of the city where there might be an existing arts presence, where certain museums or attractions are. And the goal really would be to create mutually reinforcing relationships with those locations as well. There is a benefit to concentrating all these uses in one place because it creates that relationship between them and sets up a situation where they're more likely to be successful. But at the end of the day, the big picture is, how do we get people going from, say, the Arts District on Mississippi Avenue completely across town into the South Inlet and into Gardner's Basin to access either a similar or a completely different kind of experience? I mean, that's the big picture of just building out the downtown, but you have to start somewhere, and the conversations can get uncomfortable because whenever you're talking about concentrating activity, investment, just focus in a particular area, people outside of that area are going to feel like they've been shortchanged.